Welcome to Toksave, Culture Talks, the podcast of Paradisec, the Pacific and Regional Archive for digital sources in endangered cultures. I'm Jodie Kell.
And I'm Stephen Gagao. These are conversations with people who have personal and cultural connections to the languages and music in our archive.
As producers of this podcast, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which it is recorded and pay our respects to their elders past and present. We extend that respect to all First Nation contributors and listeners, and please be aware that this podcast may contain the voices of deceased people. This recording transports the listener to the 1970s in Malaita, one of the largest islands in the Solomon Islands. You can hear the sound of men cracking the Ngali nuts in unison with their hammerstones, and the voices of women and children as they collect the open nuts. It is a work song at a large community gathering for the Ngali nut harvest, and it keeps the rhythm, making the work easier.
Ngali nuts are harvested from a Canarium almond tree, common in the mature lowland forests or planted around villages and in home gardens in Malaita. They are an important food source and have cultural significance for Malaitan people. In this episode, we will learn about the Ngali nut and associated cultural practices in conversation with Mary Sattin, a North Malaitan woman who is a member of the Solomon Islands diaspora in Sydney, and New Zealand anthropologist Ian Frazer, who made this recording.
Ian is an anthropologist and researcher, senior lecturer and honorary member of the Social Anthropology Department at the University of Otago, Dunedin, New Zealand. Ian has written about political history and social change in the Solomon Islands, including his 1987 book, Growth and Change in Village Agriculture, Manakwai, North Malaita. The Paradisec collection IFO1 is a record of Ian's fieldwork conducted in North Malaita from 1971 to 1985, mainly with Tobaita language speakers, as well as neighbouring Baegu, Baelelea and Lau people. His extensive collection includes reels, tapes, photos, detailed field notes and handwritten transcriptions of Tobaita language, covering music, traditional stories, history, customs and politics. This podcast is the first of 2 episodes featuring audio from the IFO1 collection, and it will focus on the customs and music surrounding the Ngali nut.
Mary Bibi Sattin is a Baegu and Tobaita language speaker who was born in Auki, the provincial capital of Malaita province, situated on the northwest coast of Malaita Island. Mary attended high school in Honiara and the University of South Pacific in Fiji. She is now retired after working in finance and accounts roles in the government of Solomon Islands, insurance companies in UK, and law firms in Sydney, Australia. Mary is a diaspora community leader with the Solomon Islands Association in New South Wales, an active member of the Anglican Church in Sydney and Solomon Islands, and she volunteers on projects which support women and children, particularly speaking out about domestic violence and abuse in Malaita. Mary recalls participating in Ngali nut ceremonies, when she was a young girl. And through this discussion, she shares her life experiences and cultural knowledge about Ngali nuts, music, and culture.
Join us now as we talk with Mary and Ian and listen to excerpts from the IFO1 collection to learn more about Ngali nuts, kata pudding, and the associated cultural practices. Welcome to another episode of Toksave Culture Talks. Today we have in the studio with us Mary Sattin, who is from Malaita in the Solomon Islands, and Ian Frazer, whose recordings make up the IFO1 collection, and those recordings are from Malaita. It should be a fascinating conversation about the music and culture of Malaita. First of all, welcome Mary, and I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself in your language.
Hai tagio sataku ni Mary Bibi Anita Sattin. Nau le mai nau fasia Malaitan na tribe nau Baegu. Kemeli Baegu karinga logo kulana Ian le ka rau anakanya to i Solomon Island. Karinga tobaita. Nau kufuta I auke ma nau vengano fasia I North I fasia Baegu. Man nyanan tarena nau lemai toko adomia Ian ai merika baisulia na Ngali saunglan kata ma maoma aga. Dona kisuina karing kay mai na fasferakia.
Thank you. And now, Ian, welcome and ask you to introduce yourself.
You know, one fasia New Zealand, ku Rauri Solomon Islands, Ngali 1971 to 1976. Ku toi Manakwai, ku Wharai Tania of Otawane I Manakwai, Sulia na Painia Thaungilana ana kata, toi Manakwai, Sulia Lima Ngali. Na ku rongo Unu oro, painia ku Riki Anga, painia na Mauma, etc.
Thank you so much.
That's good. You have a Tobaita accent.
Oh, now ja passie tijd op Baelelea and Lau.
That's why I was a Baegu close to Tobaita where you live.
You might not realise, but these two have only met today for the first time, but they've worked out lots of connections. So we're talking about Ngali nuts here. Ian, can you explain a little bit about what a Ngali nut is?
It's the Canarium Almond tree, and they're quite a soft nut. I would describe them as the same shape and size as almonds, but a softer flesh. They're about the texture of macadamia nuts. The trees, the young nut trees, they grow in the lowland forest around the coast of Malaita. It's a natural habitat. They're native to the Solomons, the Canarium tree, and this Ngali nut harvesting probably goes on in many places around the Solomons besides Malaita. But North Malaita has got this reputation for being a great producer of Ngali nuts, mainly because I think they grow well there, and the people in the past planted lots of trees and passed them down. So they're a very important food to the Tombaita people up north and to other Malaita groups, but particularly the Tombaita. They look forward to the Ngali nut season, which runs from June to September, around 6 months. And during that time, they'll be harvesting the nut and making nut pudding, and they'll also be marketing the nut as well through their networks on Malaita and also on other islands.
Okay, just a question on Ngali. The word Ngali, what does it really mean? Does it then have any significance in the name?
Yes, it's also the name used for the year, which I think comes from the the cycle of the Ngali nut, being such a common fruit and having a very set timetable in terms of the seasonality. The Tombaita, at least, they use that name for the year. I think Baegu might be the same.
Yeah, with us, Ngali nut is used for bartering. It's a way of getting money, income. And it's also, we use that for compensations when there is anything that you've broken a taboo or bride prices or things like this. It's a lot of use for it.
And so the trees are just in the forest, or are they grown in the villages?
Well, they're in groves, aren't they? They're in clusters, but they're big trees, it's like a big shelter belt. And then you do get isolated ones, sometimes in the forest, in the rest of the lowland forest. But they're really good producers when they get a collection of trees all together. So then they can create a mound of nuts pretty quickly.
What's the ownership of those trees like?
It's a very contested thing, but they are owned. They're all owned by people, a person or a group somewhere. Often they're inherited, a child will inherit a tree from their mother or their father. And they can be transferred as well. Some people, they could be transferred for pay red money or some sort of payment for them.
Yeah.
Is that right, Mary?
Yeah, if it's planted, then the person could say, oh, that's mine. So you can give it to whoever your family inherited. But if it grows nobody plants it and it grows in your land, it belongs to the tribe. So anyone in that tribe could, go and get it, collect nuts from there, or you can, Or sometimes if a land is given and there are nuts in there, that belongs to you now.
I think this goes with the ownership of land. Things grow in that land. And besides the growing of those nuts, could be the bird dropping it in that land. Wow. That now is within the boundaries of
the tribe.
Who owns that land. But it's always community anyway. Community, it's communal.
But if you're lucky enough to find one that's still, and then you can claim it, and then you sort of cultivate it, look after it as it sort of matures.
Mama buona bu, ai vei lâu mày hem buriana, hiano pasi na bu, ai vei lâu mày hem buriana.
What is that song about? It feels like there's a call and response.
It is, yes. He's calling out the names of villages around the Tombaita coast. So he says, Vei Lau Buriana.
He sings and then he answers himself. And the others at the back are just humming because they don't know where will be the next place. So the singer asks where next, where we're going to search. And I think they refer to looking for nuts, finding nuts. So he sings where. Then he answers himself a village, where that village. So he mentions all the village, around him, and then maybe Malu and all this. Then he answers himself, and then he mention a place. Then he says, then where next? Buriana means where next. Ife means at the beginning, Fe, where. And then he mentioned a place. Then once he answered, then he said, then where next? And then he mentioned another. So it goes on and on. And it depends on, if you're Tobaita, he'll be mentioning all the places in Tobaita. If you're from Baegu, you'll be naming all the places in Baegu. Because we do all the same thing, And it's not a fixed song where everybody could sing, because you don't know what village gonna, So that's why just one sing.
The way it's produced, it's in quantity, obviously for bartering or trading. How was Ngali nut stored?
Yeah, up north they had so many Ngali nut trees. It enabled them to harvest the nut in large quantities. Come the harvest season, the leaders and people who owned many trees and who had the reputation and the networks to do this, they persuaded lots of people to help them harvest the nut and to break the nut and then to put it in bamboos. That's the main form of storage, in long bamboo cylinders. And then it would be available for exchange and trade just locally or even further afield.
So they'd cut the bamboo, would they? So it made like little cylinders, is that what you mean?
Yeah. They'd select this bamboo, probably about half a metre long and 500 or 600 mils in diameter, and they cut it at one of the nodes, so there's a hole there, and then store it against the lower node in the
like
bamboo.
Malaita Tupperware, maybe.
Exactly, yes.
They cut just one side of because the bamboo has a hollow and there's two ends. So you chop one end out and that's when you push all the nuts in. Then you seal it mostly we seal it with ginger leaf.
Put it in the top then.
The top to seal the bamboo.
It's a very versatile plant, bamboo. It is not only storing Ngali nuts, but creating instruments, as we'll find out later on.
So when you were growing up, did you actually witness a lot of this activity, community activity on nut breaking?
Yeah. I was one of them. I grew up in Auki. My parents come from Baegu. But at that time, we have a lot of nuts as well, and we would go back to the village. And we would see how Ngali nuts they break or crack the nuts for pudding. Somebody takes the nut, crack it on the stone, leaves it, and they do it quickly following the rhythm. So they get the nut, crack it, and everybody has to, there might be one or two or three, and they have to keep the rhythm. And then kids or women, we do the breaking up of the nut and dividing it, nut and shells one side, nuts there, and then the mother should put them in the bamboos. So it would take maybe all evening or all day, depends on if they are making it for feasting, and maybe feasting in 1 year's time. Then when they are ready, as soon as you put them in bamboos, you've got to roast the bamboo, roast it, or it will go in the bamboo because it might go bad. So as soon as the bamboos are stuck with nuts, then you have to roast it over the fire. Then put it over the fire. There's a shelf over the fire where they cook so that the smoke keeps it for a long time. Yeah.
I was very lucky to have been at a Ngali nut feast in 1973, and it was organised especially to harvest as many nuts as possible and to make as big a pudding as possible and to feed as many people as possible. It was open to as many people who wanted to come along to this Ngali nut feast. But what was also exciting is that there was a lot of music at the time. They had songs to sing while they were cracking the nuts, and they also had songs to sing while they were pounding the Ngali nut and taro pudding, the kata. So I was lucky enough to record a couple of those songs.
Dau alam bua anda bau daro ngali bau daro ngali abo doale kami bai dasi do diamat rono tao vivina bota paririto.
They're singing while they're cracking the nut, and you can hear the hammers going in rhythm in the background.
What kind of hammers when you say hammer? Or...
It's an oval stone that is the one that they hold in their hand. And the base is a stone that looks more like a fountain. I've got a stone fountain that looks like that. And on that is just a small hole enough for the nut to sit on while the stone that is in the hand cracks it. And that sounds more like a hammer. But it's not against the metal, that is the nut. So it's only one hit. You don't hit twice on the same nut. You only hit on that stone, hit it, it's cracked, another one. And as he cracks the nut, he sings along, or sometimes it's just humming, and there'll be somebody calling out a word. That is for encouragement. Yeah, encouragement, so that, because it could go on for a long time.
Very tedious.
So it encourages the man to to keep the rhythm and go on. Because erena means come on, some of the words. Erena.
And the names for the hammer, we call it kwandili up north, but you have another name for it.
Yeah, in Baegu we call it the hand stone, where you hold it fau kwai, and that's the oval stone in the hand. And the stone, the base, is fau rau. Fau is stone. So fau kwai is in the hand, and fau rau is the base.
Now this is a big group, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah,
Are they places that he's calling out?
Yeah, because Rofe, if you don't listen properly, it could have two meanings there. Rofe means to fish, but Rofe means searching for.
Searching.
It's all about searching for
the nuts. Yeah. So he's searching, and then he mentioned some places.
And you can see how the music helps bring people together like that.
Oh, it's great for the occasion because they're all, he's singing, but they're all hammering together and feeling the time goes much quicker when there's something to entertain them.
I think music helps the production line.
It does,
so,
yes.
And then the rhythm of production actually follows.
That's right. Yeah, it probably raises the productivity.
And at these events where they're crushing the nuts, is everybody there? All the kids and women, everyone there?
Yeah.
And the dogs.
And the dogs? Whole lot.
Yeah.
And so as a child you were going to these?
Yeah. Well, we get the nuts out after it's been cracked. So we would take the nuts out after it's been cracked. The person who cracks through puts it aside.
Okay, so you don't have to put your hand in
no,
and get crushed.
No. He sits maybe in the middle or somewhere, and he just cracks the nuts all around him. Then he puts them on to one side with kids or some women. They divide them, take the nuts, then shells somewhere, and then put the nuts out. And then there are other women who put them in bamboos.
Yes, there's always something to do, isn't there? You can bring the nuts up to the people that are hammering them, and then or help with putting them in the bamboos and all that kind of thing.
But on this occasion, nobody goes away hungry or without anything. They will always at the end say, okay, here's a bamboo of nut, being or they'll say, your nut, take it home with you, as a means of thank you. Or they would have a big feast and everybody eat together and say, oh, this is the day of cracking nut. you come with some taro and that, and then everybody roast taro also, and while the cracking nut, some will be cooking and making some kata. And
you both spoke about kata as being something that when you went back to the village, like Mary when you were at school, or Ian when you went back to New Zealand, then went back, that is what people would make you, is that right?
Absolutely, yes, yeah. No, they'd always come up with some kata the first night I was back. And matter of just finding some bamboos of nuts somewhere. If they didn't have them themselves, they'd go and get one from someone else and then roast some taro. But it's regarded as a elite food, good food, much coveted by everyone.
Because kata is a special food, special meal. You don't eat it every day. It's only for somebody arriving, if like a guest of honor, or some, whenever I go back home, my father, the first thing he cooks for me is kata. They would make a kata, and it's an honor thing. Or if you have a special guest arriving, you would make him kata. It's a very special meal. That means you're honored to have kata, because nuts are very rare. And to make a bamboo of nut, it takes a long time.
I was lucky again, after spending a couple of times watching the harvesting and recording the songs sung during the harvesting. I was lucky to be invited to a pudding making feast where they would make pudding on a large scale, the kata, and that was the main event of the day, bringing in many bamboos of ngali nut, and bringing in lots of taro and roasting the taro and putting the ingredients in these huge bowls, ramboa, they were a couple of meters long and deep, and then pounding it with bamboo sticks, a bit bigger than sticks, sort of bamboo staffs, I suppose. A group of men circled around the pudding bowl, pounding it, and again, like the nut cracking, getting into a rhythm with that to sort of make it more tolerable as a heavy work. This time they were singing songs again, the different name. The songs during the nut cracking they called Ngali, and the songs during the pudding making thou kata, but that just means thou is beating the kata to make the pudding. Is that right?
Yeah.
Shall we have a listen to that one? I mean, you can hear the kids laughing in the background, can't you? It sounds like such a fun event. Do you recall these times?
Yeah, because then you're going to be eating.
So this is the thou kata, and the song line is about
a pigeon. Thou kata is the pounding the pudding. Kata is the roasted, the roasted nut and roasted taro. Yeah, and they're pounding it. Thou kata means pound the pudding and pound the pudding. And the song is about a bola is pigeon, a bola of the tree, and then they talk and make some stories about where it goes, how it is in the trees, and that's the song.
And is that pigeon sit in the ngali nut tree? Is that?
Yeah. Bola of the tree.
the bird of the tree.
Yeah,
and it's called a bola.
Bola is that bird, pigeon.
The bird, yeah.
And is that language easy to understand, or is it an old form of language?
Well, that language is old. Or you hear the language in the villages and in the bush different from if you're in town. People now are using more of English words, broken English words. Yeah. But in that, it's the old languages where they don't mix it with any English word. Yeah. And it could be with some Mota language, I'm not sure, but some of the words are quite, you don't come across every day.
I love the ending of this one.
They speed it up.
Speeding up at the end, people might be getting hungry.
At great risk.
Actually, they're getting happy because they'll be getting a bamboo of kata.
Or sometimes when it is, when you pound the pudding, and then if the rambo or the mortar is enough for people to hold it up, they will, they have to mix it, so that it comes off from the sides. So you have to hold it with a smaller mortar. Only one person you have to make so that it comes off. You mix it and then you have to shake it. With a bigger one, they will shout. Make a lot of noise.
Get the energy up. Beautiful recording. You really feel like you're there at the time. And Stephen, just throwing this over to you, what about in your home? Do you have kata and ngali?
I was talking to Ian about this. In his opening remarks about ngali nut, he indicated a word called galip nut. And galip nut happens to come from where I come from. And it's the same thing.
It's a Tolai word.
It's a Tolai word.
Yeah.
Galip nut is ngali nut. And exactly the same practices, but not to the scale that the Malaitans are doing. We do the taro, roasted taro, and the ngali nuts or the galip nut, but we call it kurkurpa. It's another word, but it's the same thing. The kata is known as that. So there's a lot of similarities.
And not being a one-top myself, I went and looked on the map when we were talking about this, and you can see from Malaita around to East New Britain that it would have been not too difficult to travel by boat across. There would be a lot of connections.
Well, I'll add a bit on that. We have a very close connection with the Malaitans and with Vanuatu because we are on the northern part of PNG, where it's out in the island.
Yeah.
First I met Steve, I thought he was Malaitan.
Oh, did you?
I went and asked him where you from, because I thought he was Malaitan.
From how he looked and his accent.
Yeah. And then when he said his Papa, I said, can't be.
We met at the airport and said, you Malaitan? How close to? Okay, just a question about the new generation. Are they being made aware or informed that such a tradition was taking place in the past and for the future?
Not that I've seen. Maybe right in Tobaita or Baegu in the bush. But now, since 1970s, that I haven't seen, only maybe when you went here.
Yeah, no, I suspect that there hasn't been anything since, not on that scale. They could still make kata, but that was just sort of within the family. But large-scale nut cracking, I don't think that's going on anymore. It really depends on being able to get a lot of people. And in recent times, people have got busier with cash crops and things like that. So it's not easier to get them to put another day aside. I mean, there are volunteer days for church and for other things as well. So the pressure on time now is a bit greater than it was in the past. Yeah.
So these recordings are a beautiful record of the time in the past. How do you feel when you hear them, Mary?
Homesick. Makes me think of.
Of course, yeah.
Makes me think of my childhood days as well. Yeah, because that's what I would sit beside that person, and we would be dividing the nuts from the shells, after it's been cracked, and you hear all this, mai and all this.
But was it happy times?
Oh yeah, we love it.
Yeah.
We love those days,
Run!
Thank you, Ian Frazer and Mary Sattin, for joining us on Toksave Culture Talks. Today's interview was very informative and engaging with these amazing recordings of the Ngali nuts' traditional practices. Interestingly, from my own personal perspectives, in my language, Ngali nuts are called garlic nuts, so I found relevance to my own culture of New Britain Island in Papua New Guinea.
The TCT1 collection contains the full interview with Mary and Ian, and if you would like to access it and the IFO1 collection, or you would like more information about Paradisec, the work we do, and the online catalogue, you can visit our website at www.paradisec.org.au.
Toksave Culture Talks was launched as part of the United Nations International Year of Indigenous Languages in 2019.
We would like to acknowledge the support of the Australian Research Council's Centre of Excellence for the Dynamics of Language and the University of Sydney, the University of Melbourne and the Australian National University.